We're going to continue our sermon series on small wonder, and this is the second of 7 sermons, and I am preaching on wonderful news. And of course, the tree is up, the candle is lit, Advent has begun. Here we are. Wonderful news often comes in small packages, I find. So we've got a picture of Christmas lights. How many of you remember when you used to have to get the Christmas lights out and check them all individually? Yes, there's some groaning. Oh my goodness, I'm so glad we don't have to do that anymore. And yet, you know, when we look at them, one small light on its own, it doesn't really make that much difference, does it? But if we put them all together, I'm hoping all of your houses look like this, yes? And of course, we have the float going out this week, which is very exciting. And thinking of Christmas lights, I do have a little bit of a quiz. Just want to check who already has their lights up. More than in the service beforehand. Just to say, we had 2. Here we have 4. Oh, maybe 5. When do we think people start putting their Christmas lights up? Do we think? So, how many people think that most people put them up in December? Yes. November. Oh, no. How many people do you think put their lights up in October? Someone said none. Tom was like, none. That would be terrible. 25% of UK households will put their trees up and their lights up in October. Yes, indeed. Now, how many people do you think wait until Christmas Eve to put their Christmas tree up, which is, of course, the tradition, just to let you all know, wearing her Christmas jumper. How many do we think? 10%? 20%? 5% we have over here. Any others? 1% somewhere. That is closer. It is, in fact, apparently 2%. I don't know who's going into houses and checking this, but there we have it. And for those who may be wondering, when is the recommended day to put your Christmas tree and lights up? January. Not January. No. Good housekeeping, which of course is the fount of all knowledge, tells us that today is the day. So please do rush home, put your Christmas trees up, and join in with good housekeeping and everyone who follows their good news. And I wonder, how many people do you think keep them up for the 12 days of Christmas? How many here would keep them up until just January 6th? A few, quite a few actually. It's not common now. Most people will take them down after Boxing Day and they're gone. Christmas is over. And Christmas lights is one way that we prepare for Christmas, isn't it? Advent is historically a time of fasting and preparation, actually a time of cutting back. And yes, as we hear, 25% of people will have their Christmas trees up from October. So perhaps that sense of fasting and preparing has slipped away from us a bit. But perhaps it would be really great if we could capture some of that zeal for preparation and for welcoming Jesus afresh. So this sermon series, it is an invitation to prioritize that preparation, that being ready to receive the gift of Jesus and of his coming. And this morning we had our passage read from Isaiah, and Isaiah speaks of a small child. And I always think it's really interesting when we hear passages speak of small children, because whilst it might be horrendous for us to hear it, actually children weren't even thought of as sort of being human or relevant, because there was so much fear that they would die and not live that they weren't really considered to be part of the group until they were adults. And yet here we have Isaiah speaking of a child as the person who will come and have a big impact. A small infant, big impact. Isaiah is the first prophetic book in the Old Testament to be kept and recorded. And it's always interesting to notice when things are recorded, because if they weren't considered important, they just wouldn't have been kept hold of. And in order for Isaiah's words to have been recorded, they needed to have meaning then, not just for us now. So it's important that we remember it had meaning then as well. And Isaiah is a book of 3 parts. It has a message for God's people before they go into exile, warning them that they are not following God's ways and to return. And there's some of that in this passage. And a message during exile. This is hard, but there is something coming after. and then a message after exile that God intends to restore his people to the fullness of all he has promised for them. And Isaiah's writings in their whole, they express a theology of consolation and hope. And it's a message that is true then, and it is true for us now. It is, overall, a message that is wonderful news. So we're going to look at three themes from our passage this morning. And I always feel a little bit like I'm saying something from a Bob Hartman book, a Bob Hartman story that starts with wonderful news. So our first one is wonderful news. In darkness, God brings light in Jesus. I feel like you should join in with me. Come on. Wonderful news. Rejoice because Jesus brings freedom from oppression. And finally, wonderful news. Light finds its fullness in the presence and the person of Jesus. So wonderful news. In darkness, God brings light. Here we have the passage that it comes from. We're looking at the first couple of verses of the passage that was just read to us. And we notice that this passage begins with the word nevertheless. Nevertheless. And it's a really important word because it reminds us that actually Isaiah has been speaking to people who feel that something is not okay. They're either reading this while they were in exile, or Isaiah is warning them of the exile. They will have read them in these words in both spaces. God's people have ignored him. They have not followed his ways, and they have not worshipped him properly. And yet Isaiah, the prophet that goes to the people, says, nevertheless. Now, none of us really like to be told what we're doing wrong. I definitely don't. And the picture looks pretty bleak for God's people right now. And sometimes things look bleak for us. Maybe we feel that we've done something so wrong, it's just so big and it's consumed our lives. Or maybe we just find it really hard this time of year when it's so dark, and putting up our Christmas lights breaks the darkness and brings the light. We need hope, and here it is in this word, nevertheless. When I was vicar in parish before being here, we used to do a Christingle service every year. And in that Christingle service, one of the ministers who was part of my team would always plunge the church into darkness. And I pondered doing that, but because I'm a last-minute planner and we haven't done a risk assessment, we won't be doing that. But he would plunge the church into darkness and then hold up his one Christingle, which was the only one lit in the church, and say, at the moment we can't see a thing, but if we wait, this one candle will be enough to illuminate this space so that we can all see enough to move around safely. One light, one person, Jesus, can transform the atmosphere. And so in thinking about wonderful news and God bringing light through Jesus, I invite us as we prepare through Advent to think where it is darkest in our life, even where it is darkest, we can experience light. So I wonder where those places are for you. And I'm very aware as I say that there's probably a number of us here who have been really affected by the fire in Hong Kong. And sometimes there are things in our lives where to think that there could be light in darkness can just feel so hard. And yet that is the promise of Jesus. We'll pick that up a bit more as I go along. But where might we hope to experience that light? Some of the resources to help us prepare through Advent can be found on our website, and they can also be found in the YouVersion Bible app if you have it, and it will look like that. It starts tomorrow. There's 25 reflections through Advent, which take us right up to Christmas Day. But wherever we feel that we would really hope that we would experience light, I invite us to pray, Jesus, bring light. Jesus, bring light. And we can rejoice that Jesus does bring light. So our next point is wonderful news. Rejoice, because Jesus brings freedom from oppression. And of course, he did do that for God's people. They were released from exile eventually. And so Isaiah seeks to convey this. And it might be difficult for us to feel that. It might be difficult to feel like God's promises are real for us. I'm sure it was difficult in exile to imagine that was ever going to end. And yet, Isaiah is wanting to tell God's people it won't be forever. So I wonder, are you feeling Christmassy? Having checked that only 5 of you have got your lights up, I think I'm the only person. Oh, no, there are 2 of us in a Christmas jumper. Are you feeling Christmassy? We have a nice Christmassy picture. There we go. Hands up if you're feeling Christmassy. Oh, there are a few. Just like to tell you in the service beforehand, everyone went, no. Which is fair enough. It's not even December yet. Are we feeling Christmassy? It can be really tricky. And the point is that, of course, when in exile, God's people did not feel the freedom from oppression. They didn't feel the promise, and yet the promise is really real. And sometimes we can make sense of a promise when we look back. We often rely on it feeling really Christmassy, don't we, around this time of year? I hear people say, I don't really feel Christmassy yet. I'll get there, but I don't really feel Christmassy. And someone might say, oh, no, now I feel Christmassy. I listened to that song on the radio and here I am, I feel Christmassy, whatever it is. And we might use the word wonderful. Oh, aren't those Christmas lights wonderful? Isn't Jordan's jumper wonderful? Yes, thank you. All that Christmas meal, it was wonderful, wonderful, you know. And we sort of use it as a bit of a compliment. And yet here in our reading from Isaiah 9, the word that is used for wonderful is the word pala. And pala points to a miracle. It's not just, oh, this is wonderful. It is like, this is the thing. This is the miracle. This is the wonderful thing that is going to happen. And by this, Isaiah is, of course, perhaps not even known to him, referring to the greatest of wonders, which even at the time of Jesus' birth was shockingly missable. When I stopped being a vicar of a parish and I came here, started worshipping at this lovely church, really glad to be here. And I remember Tom asking me, how has Christmas been for you, that first Christmas? And I said, well, because I wasn't doing any of the services, which of course I was devastated not to be doing 1 million services in 3 days. But I said, you know, the interesting thing about not being a vicar is that if you have to go looking for Christmas. You have to go looking for the real meaning of Christmas because it doesn't just arrive, because you're not thinking about hymns from September and carol services from August sometimes, depending on how serious they are. You really have to go looking for it. And that's the invitation for each of us, not to miss it, but to really go looking for it this year. Look for that small wonder. Because there is lots of good news to be had. I don't actually listen to the news anymore. I took the decision a long time ago that most of the news that needs to get to me does come to me without me having to listen to it. However, one of the things that I notice about the news is that it plays on our natural predisposition to want to know what's wrong rather than what's right. And there are actually some really good news stories out there. So I'm just going to share a few of them that I found. They're UK-based mostly, just because I thought you could go wide and there will be many, but that's where I stuck to. So there's a group in Kent. 2 people decided to start a music and singing group for stroke survivors, which has been reported to be vital for the recovery of those stroke survivors. They feel that it's really helping them in their well-being. They feel that the attendees feel like it is a family when they go to these weekly gatherings. And the group are currently rehearsing for their Christmas show. And this group has even helped with speech rehabilitation. In Scarborough, the Salvation Army host a cooking class and a budgeting course, and it has been reported as improving mental health and well-being and helping people to make friends and combat isolation. There's a homelessness charity called homelessnessnest.org, and they have started a Smile Again Saturday and Sunday which is providing free dental care for people who don't have access to it. And even amidst what has happened in Hong Kong, I can imagine that there are still things that can be celebrated. 2,000 firefighters turned up to diligently put the fire out. There will be support workers who are helping those who are displaced, who find themselves in temporary shelters. There will be people who are organising food, and I'm sure many acts of kindness that are not reported. Good news, sadly, is not often headline news. Are we noticing anything familiar? See where we're going yet? So this Advent, The invitation, I would suggest, is to look for the things of the kingdom that may seem small and rejoice in each and every one of them. We may not feel Christmassy yet. We may not hear of world-changing reports of good news and peace across the globe. But Jesus was one small birth in a barely known town that has rippled through the whole of humanity and changed the hope we can have. Every act of good is an act of God and an act of the kingdom, one act at a time. Chains are being broken. And I am confident that in our own way, each and every one of us here is part of that good news. And even if we don't feel it, I'm sure we are to somebody. And so finally, wonderful news. Light finds its fullness in the person of Jesus. When we focus on the light, when we focus on the good news and the good news stories, we begin to see more of the kingdom of God. And it actually changes us. It changes how we receive the world around us. And it's not an ignorance to the darkness. It's not ignoring the pain or where there is difficulty. It's a choosing to see the light amidst it. And light can transform darkness. In this passage, the person that Isaiah says is coming to change the world is called Wonderful Counselor. And I believe that Jesus is our wonderful counselor in the everyday. Isaiah would have been talking about something that was going to make a difference then, and it's very likely that he was speaking about Hezekiah, who was regarded as one of the most faithful kings. He drew the people of God back to proper worship of God and to observance of his laws. And in 2 Chronicles 31, he is referred to a king who was good and right before the Lord. And it's wonderful. There are often many leaders who are fantastic at being good leaders. Even good, may have good counselors. But Hezekiah's human attributes of wisdom, peace, uprightness, and justice, they're definitely what God's people needed then. But Isaiah is actually talking about something more. He's talking about something that God is going to build on that. And so when he uses this wonderful news word, this pala, he's talking about that miraculous leader. And it is a leader who is given the name Wonderful Counselor. And actually, kings generally were not counselors in and of themselves. They had counselors who advised them. This King Jesus, he is the counselor. He needs no advisors because he is God. He is mighty God. He is everlasting, verses 6 and 7. Hezekiah and other kings, they may have been wise people, but Jesus is the counselor and ruler of us all. He needs no external support. And just like the good news stories that I shared with you earlier, and there are many, many more, you can look them up. There are lots of websites actually that deliberately share good news stories of what's going on. The Christmas story in and of itself is a very small story. It is a small story that has a big impact. It comes in the smallest package. It comes as a child. And so I think the invitation is to not despise those small things that we see. As we seek to move towards Christmas, as we seek to welcome Jesus, of course Jesus is big and wonderful news. But it began small, humble, in need of our help. Small wonder, big impact. John says, in the beginning was the Word. Jesus is the Word. The Word became flesh and made his dwelling among us. And so I invite us, as we think about this wonderful news in Jesus, the gift to each and every one of us every single day, how might we trust in God's ways, even when they seem small and insignificant? One candle in the darkness is enough to illuminate this space for us all. Jesus is our hope. Jesus is our light. Jesus is our help and our rescue. Jesus is all we need. And so perhaps this morning you've come and things are feeling pretty dark. There are heavy burdens upon you. And Jesus says, walk with me. My burden is light. We're not promised life without trial. God's people didn't have life without trial when Isaiah shared these words with them. But we are promised that Jesus will share our burdens, that he will bring something that is beyond that. And so let's just take a moment to think what perhaps are our burdens as we come this morning, because Jesus wants to bring light in those burdens. Or maybe, like Hezekiah, we're feeling that we need to clear out something and refocus. And if that's the case, then I would invite you to come and to have someone pray alongside you. You don't have to name the things if you don't want to, but you can have someone pray with you, because sometimes it can be really hard to hold these things on our own. Jesus is our light. We pray, Jesus, come bring your light. Jesus is our wonderful news, and he is our wise counsellor. So I'm going to invite the band to come up. And as they begin to get ready to lead us, let's just hold some silence. Perhaps we'll have the picture of the candle up again, if we may. When I was a child, we used to have an Advent candle. We lit it every day. And actually, traditionally, that would be an hour of prayer in silence. And so just, if the candle is helpful to look at, think, Jesus, come bring light where I need light. Help me focus on you this Advent.